My name is Octavia Burrell, and I'm 72 years old. For 50 years, my family told me to be quiet, to stop complaining, to accept my place, to be grateful for scraps. They wanted me silent about the abuse I endured, silent about the opportunities they stole from me, silent about the credit they took for my work, silent about everything that would expose who they really were. So I stayed silent for decades. But 6 months ago, I broke that silence in the most public way possible. I wrote a book, a memoir detailing every betrayal, every theft, every moment of abuse and manipulation I'd suffered at the hands of my family. And last week, at my book launch event in front of 500 people, my entire family showed up uninvited. They thought they could intimidate me into silence one more time. They thought they could stop the book from being published, stop me from telling the truth. Instead, they screamed. They screamed when I read chapters aloud detailing their abuse. They screamed when audience members applauded my courage. They screamed when reporters asked them questions they couldn't answer. And they screamed loudest when I revealed the final chapter, the one I'd kept secret until that moment, exposing the biggest lie of all. The look on their faces when they realized I'd documented everything, that I had proof of every claim, that their reputations were about to be destroyed by the truth they'd tried so hard to bury. I'll never forget it. But to understand how we got to that moment, how a woman who'd been silenced for 50 years finally found her voice, I need to take you back to where it all began. I was born in 1953 in rural Georgia, the youngest of 6 children. My parents, Judge and Pearlie Burrell, were sharecroppers who worked land they didn't own and barely survived. Being the youngest meant I was often overlooked. My older siblings, Sterling, Royal, Winnie, Homer, and Zenobia, got most of the attention, the food, the opportunities. But I was smart, really smart. I could read by age 4, teaching myself with old newspapers and books I found at the library. By age 8, I was reading at a high school level. My 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Dovie Matthews, recognized my intelligence. Octavia is gifted, Mrs. Matthews told my parents. She should be in advanced classes. She could go to college someday, get scholarships. College, my mother laughed. We can't afford college, and why would we waste money educating a girl? She'll just get married and have bobbies. But she has real potential, Mrs. Matthews tried. She has potential to help around the house and earn her keep, my father interrupted. That's enough education for her. That was the end of that conversation. While my older brothers Sterling and Royal went to high school, I was pulled out of school after 8th grade to work, cleaning houses, taking care of my elderly grandmother, helping with farm work. Education is wasted on girls, my mother said. You need to learn practical skills. How to cook, clean, take care of a family, that's what matters. But I want to learn, I protested. I want to go to high school. What you want doesn't matter, my father said. This family needs workers, not dreamers. Now get to work. So I worked, and I stayed silent about the unfairness, because speaking up only made things worse. When I was 16, something happened that would set the pattern for the next 50 years. I'd been writing in secret, stories, poems, essays about life in rural Georgia. I kept notebooks hidden under my mattress, writing late at night by candlelight after everyone else was asleep. One day, my sister Zenobia, 24 and working as a secretary in town, found my notebooks. Octavia, these are really good, Zenobia said, reading my stories. You're a talented writer. Thank you, I said, surprised by the compliment. I've been practicing for years. Can I show these to my boss? Zenobia asked. He works at the local newspaper. They're looking for submissions for a writing contest. First prize is $500 and publication. $500 was a fortune to us. That money could change my life, maybe pay for high school, or help me escape to somewhere I could get an education. Yes, I said, please show him. Zenobia took 3 of my best stories. 2 weeks later, she came home with exciting news. I won the contest, Zenobia announced at dinner. Everyone congratulated her. My parents were proud. My siblings were impressed. I sat there confused. What contest? The newspaper writing contest, Zenobia said, not meeting my eyes. I submitted some stories and won first prize. Those were MY stories, I said quietly. What? Zenobia asked, pretending not to hear. Those were MY stories, I said louder. I wrote them, you just submitted them. Octavia, don't be ridiculous, Zenobia said. I wrote those stories. You can barely string 2 sentences together. That's not true, I protested. Zenobia, you know I wrote those. You asked if you could show them to your boss. I never said that, Zenobia lied smoothly. You must have misunderstood. These are my stories. I've been writing for years. I looked to my parents for support. Mama, Daddy, those were my notebooks, my stories. Zenobia stole them. Octavia, enough, my father said. Your sister won a contest fair and square. Stop being jealous and trying to take credit for her success. But I'm not. Enough, my father shouted. I won't have you lying about your sister. Now apologize to Zenobia for these false accusations. I couldn't believe what was happening. I won't apologize for telling the truth. My father stood up, his face red with anger. Then you'll go to your room without supper, and you'll stay there until you learn some respect. I was sent to my room. Zenobia kept the $500 prize money I'd earned with my words, my talent, my late nights of writing. And I learned a lesson that would define the next 50 years of my life. In my family, the truth didn't matter. Power mattered, and I had none. Over the next decade, the pattern repeated itself again and again. When I was 18, I designed a quilt pattern that was beautiful and intricate, something I'd spent months perfecting. My sister Winnie, who sold crafts at the local market, took my design and claimed it as her own. She made hundreds of dollars selling quilts with my pattern. When I confronted her, she said, "Prove it's yours. Where's your copyright? Your documentation? Oh, you don't have any? Then it's my word against yours, and everyone knows you're a liar." When I was 21, I developed a recipe for peach cobbler that was exceptional, combining techniques I'd learned and improved over years. My brother Homer, who ran a small restaurant, added it to his menu and claimed it was a family recipe he'd perfected. When I asked for credit, he laughed. Credit? For what? Making food? That's what women do, it's not special. When I was 24, I wrote a song, lyrics and melody, that I sang at church. The choir director, my brother Royal, took my song, registered it under his name, and sold it to a gospel music publisher for $1,000. You can't prove you wrote it, Royal said when I confronted him. You have no recording, no written proof. It's your word against mine. Who do you think people will believe? Every time, the answer was the same. They believed my family. They believed the people with power, with credibility, with documentation. They never believed me. The youngest, the uneducated, the one with no proof. And every time I tried to speak up, to claim what was mine, I was told to be silent. Stop causing trouble, my mother would say. Stop being jealous of your siblings' success, my father would say. Stop lying for attention, they all would say. So eventually, I stopped speaking up. I stayed silent. I accepted that in my family, I would never be believed, never be credited, never be acknowledged. I became invisible. When I was 42 years old, I finally escaped my family. I'd spent decades working menial jobs, housekeeping, cooking, childcare, while my siblings built careers using my ideas, my talent, my work. Sterling had become a successful businessman using a business plan I'd written for him. Royal was a well-known gospel songwriter using songs I'd composed. Zenobia was a published author using stories I'd written. Winnie ran a profitable craft business using my designs. Homer owned a successful restaurant using my recipes. And me, I cleaned their houses, cooked their meals, watched their children, all while they took credit for everything I'd created. But in 1993, I'd finally saved enough money to leave. I moved to Atlanta, far from my family, and started over. I got a job as a housekeeper for wealthy families. I took night classes to get my GED, then enrolled in community college. At age 45, I earned my associate's degree. At 48, I earned my bachelor's degree in English literature. I started writing again, not sharing with anyone, just writing for myself. Stories, essays, eventually a novel. And I started documenting everything my family had stolen from me over the years. I wrote it all down, every story they'd taken, every idea they'd claimed, every piece of my work they'd profited from. I didn't know why I was documenting it. I just knew I needed a record. Proof that I'd existed, that I'd created things, even if no one believed me. 20 years ago, my mother died. The family gathered for her funeral. I hadn't seen most of them in years. Sterling was now a millionaire businessman. Royal was a famous gospel music producer. Zenobia had published 5 books. Winnie ran a craft empire. Homer owned a chain of restaurants. They were all successful, wealthy, celebrated. And they'd all built their success on my work. At the funeral reception, Sterling approached me. "Octavia, it's good to see you," Sterling said stiffly. "How have you been?" "Fine," I said. "I got my college degree. I'm working, supporting myself." "College," Sterling laughed. "What did you study?" "English literature," I said. "That's nice," Sterling said dismissively. "Though I'm not sure what use a degree is at your age. You're what, 62? Bit late for a career, isn't it?" "I enjoy learning," I said, "and I've been writing." "Writing?" Royal overheard and joined the conversation. "Writing what? Grocery lists?" They both laughed. "Actually, I've written a novel," I said. "Oh, really?" Zenobia joined us, smirking. "What's it about?" "It's a family drama," I said carefully. "About siblings who steal from each other." The smirks faded. "Steal?" Winnie asked, suddenly serious. "That sounds like a serious accusation." "It's fiction," I said quickly. "Just a story." "Better be," Homer said, walking over. "Wouldn't want you spreading lies about the family, making up stories to explain why you're not as successful as the rest of us." "I'm not making up," I started. "Octavia, we need to talk," Sterling interrupted. "Privately." He pulled me aside, away from the others. "Listen," Sterling said, his voice low and threatening. "I don't know what you think you're writing, but if you're planning to tell lies about this family, you need to stop. Now." "They're not lies," I said. "They're truths, things you all did to me." "Things we did to you?" Sterling laughed coldly. "Octavia, we gave you jobs when you needed work. We helped you when you had nothing. You should be grateful, not bitter." "You stole from me," I said. "My stories, my ideas, my work." "We used some suggestions you made," Sterling conceded. "That's not stealing. That's collaboration. That's family helping family." "Suggestions," I repeated incredulously. "Sterling, I wrote your entire business plan. You took it and claimed it as yours." "Prove it," Sterling challenged. "Where's your evidence, your documentation, anything that shows you created those ideas?" I had no answer. I'd been too young, too naive, too powerless to document anything back then. "That's what I thought," Sterling said. "Octavia, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop talking about this. Stop writing about it. Stop trying to take credit for other people's success." "And if I don't?" I asked. "Then we'll make sure everyone knows what you really are," Sterling said. "A bitter, jealous woman who lies about her own family because she can't accept her own failures. We'll destroy what little reputation you have," he continued. "We'll make sure no publisher ever touches anything you write. We'll make sure you regret ever trying to speak up." "So stay silent," Sterling concluded. "Like you've always done, like you should keep doing. It's better for everyone." I looked at my brother, this successful, wealthy man who'd built his fortune on my ideas, and felt rage and helplessness in equal measure. But I stayed silent, because what choice did I have? 10 years ago, something changed. I was 62 years old, working as a housekeeper for a family in Atlanta. One day, I was cleaning the home office of my employer, Artie Chen, a literary agent. On her desk was a manuscript with a rejection letter. I couldn't help but read it. While this memoir has powerful moments, it lacks the author's authentic voice. The story feels sanitized, like the author is holding back the full truth. Memoirs succeed when authors are completely honest, even when that truth is uncomfortable or makes people angry. That rejection letter changed my life. I realized I'd been holding back the truth my whole life, staying silent to keep peace, to avoid conflict, to protect people who'd never protected me. But what if I stopped holding back? What if I wrote the full truth, regardless of who it hurt or angered? That week I started writing again, not fiction this time, memoir. I wrote about growing up the youngest in a family that dismissed me, about my siblings stealing my work, about being silenced every time I tried to claim what was mine. I wrote about the business plans Sterling stole, the songs Royal claimed, the stories Zenobia published, the quilt designs Winnie sold, the recipes Homer profited from. I wrote about 50 years of being invisible, being silenced, being told my truth didn't matter. And I documented everything. I found old notebooks with my original writings. I tracked down newspapers showing Zenobia's winning stories I'd written years earlier. I collected evidence showing my siblings' successes happened immediately after I'd shared ideas with them. I built a case, not for a court of law, but for the court of public opinion. It took me 8 years to write the book. 8 years of remembering, documenting, verifying, and finally, telling the complete truth. I titled it, Silent No More, How My Family Stole My Voice and My Work, and How I'm Taking Both Back. 2 years ago, I found a literary agent willing to represent me. Ironically, Artie Chen, my former employer who'd read my manuscript and immediately recognized its power. "This is explosive," Artie said. "Publishers are going to fight over this. But Octavia, you need to be prepared. Your family will come after you hard when this publishes." "Let them come," I said. "I've been silent for 70 years, I'm done." Artie submitted the manuscript to publishers. Within a week, we had 3 offers. Within a month, we'd signed a contract with a major publisher for a 6-figure advance. But somehow, my family found out. Sterling called me, his voice cold. "I hear you're publishing a book about the family." "Yes," I said. "You need to stop this," Sterling said. "Pull the manuscript, cancel the contract." "No," I said simply. "Octavia, you're making a huge mistake," Sterling threatened. "We'll sue you for defamation. We'll prove you're lying. We'll destroy you financially and publicly." "Sue me," I said calmly. "I welcome it, because then we'll go to court and I'll present all my evidence, every notebook, every document, every piece of proof that you and our siblings stole from me for 50 years. "You have no proof," Sterling shouted. "I have plenty," I said. "I've spent years collecting it, so go ahead, sue me. Let's see whose story holds up in court." Sterling hung up, but he didn't sue. None of them did. Because they knew I was telling the truth, and they knew I could prove it. 6 months ago, Silent No More was published. It became an immediate bestseller. The story of a woman silenced for decades, finally claiming her voice, resonated with thousands of readers. Reviews were glowing. A powerful testament to resilience and the cost of silence. Octavia Burrell's story is every woman who's been dismissed, stolen from, and told to be grateful for scraps. This book will make you angry, make you cry, and make you cheer for a woman who refused to stay silent any longer. My family went silent themselves. No public statements, no responses, nothing. Until last week, when my publisher arranged a book launch event at a major bookstore in Atlanta. 500 people RSVP'd. Local media planned to attend. It was going to be the biggest moment of my life. And that's when my family decided they'd had enough of my voice. They showed up uninvited, all of them, planning to intimidate me into silence one last time. But they didn't know about the final chapter, the one I'd kept secret until the book launch. The chapter that revealed their biggest secrets and lies. And when I read that chapter aloud at the event, in front of 500 people and television cameras, they screamed, "This story is just beginning. Subscribe now. Hit that like button and turn on NOTFICTONS." The bookstore was packed. 500 folding chairs filled every available space, and people were standing along the walls. Camera crews from 3 local news stations had set up in the back. Reporters sat in the front row with notebooks ready. I sat on the small stage, my book in my hands, my heart pounding with nervousness and anticipation. My publisher, Dovie Richardson, stood at the podium introducing me. Octavia Burrell's story is one of perseverance, truth, and finally, justice, Dovie said to the crowd. For 50 years, her family silenced her, stole from her, and erased her contributions. Tonight, she breaks that silence permanently. Please welcome Octavia Burrell. The applause was thunderous. I stood up, walked to the podium, and looked out at the supportive faces in the audience. And then I saw them. In the back of the room, near the exit, stood my entire family. All 5 of my siblings, their spouses, even some of their adult children. About 15 people total, all staring at me with expressions ranging from anger to contempt to barely suppressed rage. Sterling caught my eye and drew his finger across his throat in a cutting motion. A threat. Royal pointed at me, then made a talking gesture with his hand and crossed it out. Another threat, stop talking. But Zenobia was the boldest. She actually started walking toward the stage, clearly planning to interrupt. Security guards, my publisher had hired them, anticipating trouble, stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, please return to your seat or leave the venue," a guard said firmly. "That's my sister," Zenobia hissed. "She's telling lies about our family. I have a right to defend us." "You have a right to leave if you're going to cause disruption," the guard said. "Those are your options." Zenobia retreated, but the hostile energy from my family filled the room like poison. I took a deep breath and began. "Thank you all for coming," I started, my voice stronger than I expected. "I'm going to read some excerpts from my book, Silent No More. But before I do, I want to explain why I wrote it. For 50 years, I was told to be quiet, to accept that my siblings were more talented, more capable, more deserving than me, to be grateful they let me clean their houses and watch their children. But the truth is, much of their success was built on my work," I continued. "Stories I wrote, songs I composed, business plans I created, designs I developed, recipes I perfected. All taken, all claimed by others, all profiting people who never gave me credit. Tonight, I'm going to share that truth," I said, "and I'm going to let my family respond if they wish, because unlike them, I believe everyone deserves to be heard." I opened my book to chapter 3 and began reading. I was 16 when my sister Zenobia stole my first stories. I'd written 3 pieces, one about our grandmother's wisdom, one about life on the farm, one about dreams deferred. I poured my heart into those stories. When Zenobia asked if she could show them to her boss at the newspaper, I thought she was helping me. I didn't know she planned to submit them under her own name. When she won the $500 prize, money that could have changed my life, and claimed she'd written the stories herself, I protested. I told our parents the truth, and they punished me for lying about my sister. That was my first lesson. In my family, truth didn't matter. Only power mattered. The audience murmured sympathetically. Several people were taking notes. The news cameras were recording everything. From the back of the room, Zenobia shouted, "That's a lie. I wrote those stories." "Ma'am, please be quiet or you'll be removed," security said. "I will not be quiet while my sister slanders me," Zenobia yelled. "Then you'll be escorted out," the security guard said, moving toward her. Zenobia's husband pulled her back. "Not now," I heard him hiss. "Not in front of cameras." I continued reading, moving through chapters documenting each theft. The quilt patterns Winnie stole. The business plans Sterling claimed. The songs Royal copyrighted under his name. The recipes Homer used to build his restaurant empire. Each revelation was met with gasps from the audience and shouted denials from my family. "She's making this up. She has no proof. This is character assassination." But I did have proof, and I was about to show it. "I know some of you are wondering if these claims are true," I said calmly. "So let me show you some evidence." A screen behind me lit up with images. My original handwritten notebooks from 1969. These are my notebooks from when I was 16, I explained. In them are the 3 stories Zenobia submitted to the newspaper contest. The handwriting has been verified by a forensic document examiner as mine. The dates have been verified as authentic. I showed the next slide. The newspaper article announcing Zenobia's win, dated 2 weeks after the last entry in my notebook. Here's the newspaper announcing my sister's win, I said, with my stories published under her name. The audience murmured. Reporters were writing furiously. That proves nothing, Zenobia screamed from the back. You could have copied MY stories into your notebook later. The forensic examiner tested the ink, I said calmly. It's from 1969. The paper is from 1969. The notebook itself is from 1969. You can't fake that. Zenobia went silent. I showed more evidence. Photographs of my original quilt designs from the early 1970s, compared with Winnie's original designs from the late 1970s. They were identical. Audio recordings of me singing my songs in church in the late 1970s, recordings I'd found in the church archives, compared with Royal's original compositions from the early 1980s. The melodies and lyrics were the same. Handwritten business plans I'd drafted for Sterling in the 1980s, compared with the business plan he'd submitted to investors in 1985. Identical, down to specific phrases and projections. Recipe cards in my handwriting from the 1980s, compared with Homer's signature dishes from his restaurant in the 1990s. The same, ingredient for ingredient. For years, my family claimed I had no proof, I said. That it was my word against theirs, but I kept everything. I documented everything, and now the truth is undeniable. The audience applauded. Several people were crying. The reporters looked excited. This was a huge story. My family looked trapped. They couldn't deny the evidence. They couldn't claim I was lying. The proof was right there on the screen for everyone to see. Sterling stood up. This event is over, he announced loudly. Our family will be issuing a statement through our lawyers. None of this is. Sit down, Sterling, I said firmly. I'm not finished. You've said enough lies, Sterling shouted. The only lies told in this family were the ones you all told about me, I said. Now sit down, because I'm about to read the final chapter, the one I kept secret until tonight. Sterling's face went pale. What final chapter? The one about the biggest theft of all, I said. The one that's going to shock everyone in this room. The room went completely silent. Even my family stopped protesting, suddenly nervous about what I was about to reveal. I opened my book to the final chapter, Chapter 15, titled The Inheritance. Many of you know about the thefts I've already described, I began. But there's one more theft I haven't discussed publicly until now, the theft that happened after our mother died. I saw my siblings exchange nervous glances. In 2005, our mother Pearlie Burrell died, I continued. She left behind a small estate, her house, some savings, a few valuables. Not much, maybe $75,000 total. According to her will, that estate was to be divided equally among her 6 children. That means each of us should have received about $12,500. But when the estate was settled, I received nothing, $0. My siblings told me that our mother had changed her will shortly before her death, leaving everything to them and nothing to me. She said you'd been disrespectful, I read from my book, quoting what Sterling had told me. She said you didn't deserve anything. She cut you out completely. I was devastated, I continued. I'd just gotten my college degree. I was struggling financially. That $12,500 would have helped so much. But more than the money, the idea that my mother had specifically cut me out hurt deeply. For 15 years, I believed that story. I believed my mother had rejected me one final time. The audience was completely absorbed in the story. But 2 years ago, while researching this book, I requested a copy of my mother's will from the county records office, I said, and I discovered something shocking. I showed the next slide, a legal document. This is my mother's actual will, filed in 2005, I said. And according to this will, the estate was to be divided equally among all 6 children. There was no change to the will. There was no clause cutting me out. Gasps rippled through the audience. My siblings lied, I said. They told me I'd been cut out of the will so they could keep my share. They stole my inheritance and made me believe my own mother had rejected me. That's a lie, Royal shouted, standing up. You're lying. Am I asked calmly. I showed the next slide, bank records showing the estate disbursement. 5 equal payments of $15,000 each to Sterling, Royal, Winnie, Homer, and Zenobia. If my mother had cut me out, each of you should have received $12,500, I said. But you each received $15,000. You divided my share among yourselves and lied about it. We have emails, I continued, showing the next slide, printed emails between my siblings from 2005. Sterling to Royal. Octavia doesn't know about the estate value. We can tell her she was cut out. She'll believe us. Royal to Sterling. Are you sure? What if she checks? Sterling to Royal. She won't. She's always been too passive to fight back. By the time she figures it out, if she ever does, it'll be too late to do anything about it. The room erupted. People were shouting questions. Reporters were on their feet. Camera operators were zooming in on my siblings' shocked faces. You went through my emails, Royal screamed. That's illegal. No, it's not, I said calmly. Your daughter sent them to me last year, after I contacted her and explained what her father and uncle had done. Royal turned to look at his daughter, Dovie, who was sitting in the audience. She stood up. I sent Aunt Octavia the emails, Dovie confirmed, her voice shaking but clear. Because I was tired of watching my father and uncles and aunts lie about her, tired of being part of a family built on theft and deception. You betrayed your own father, Royal shouted at her. You stole from your own sister, Dovie shot back. For 15 years, and you made her think her mother had rejected her. That's cruel, Dad. That's evil. The audience applauded Dovie's courage. Several people were crying. My other siblings were trying to leave, but reporters blocked the exits, shouting questions. Ms. Marshall, did you steal your sister's quilt designs? Mr. Burrell, is it true you took your sister's songs? Mr. Burrell, did you lie about your mother's will? Security had to hold back the reporters as my family pushed through, faces red with rage and shame, fleeing the bookstore as fast as they could. But before Sterling left, he turned and screamed at me. You're dead to this family. Do you hear me? Dead. I've been dead to this family for 50 years, I called back. The only difference is now everyone knows why. After my family fled, the book launch continued. I answered questions from the audience, signed books, spoke with reporters. The story went viral overnight. By morning, my book had jumped to 1 on Amazon. News outlets across the country were covering it. My family's businesses and reputations were under intense scrutiny. People were digging into Sterling's business, finding evidence that other ideas he'd claimed as his own had suspiciously similar predecessors. Royal's gospel music career was being investigated. How many other songs had he borrowed from struggling artists? Homer's restaurants were being reviewed, with food critics noting that his signature recipes bore striking resemblances to dishes from other cooks who'd worked for him early in his career. My family's carefully constructed reputations were crumbling. And I felt relief. After 50 years of carrying the weight of their lies, the truth was finally public. But I also knew this wasn't over. My family wouldn't accept this humiliation quietly. They would fight back. They would try to destroy me one way or another. I was right. 3 days after the book launch, I received a letter from a law firm. My family was suing me for defamation, demanding I retract the book, pay damages, and issue a public apology. They wanted me silent again. But I'd spent 50 years silent. I wasn't going back. This story is getting more intense. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Do you think Octavia should fight the lawsuit or settle? Would you have exposed your family like this? Where are you watching from? The lawsuit arrived 5 days after the book launch. A thick envelope delivered by a process server to my small apartment. I sat at my kitchen table and read through the 50-page complaint with growing disbelief. My siblings were suing me for $5 million in damages for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and tortious interference with business relationships. The lawsuit claimed I'd maliciously fabricated lies about my family, manipulated evidence to make them look guilty, and destroyed their reputations with reckless disregard for the truth. They were demanding 1. Retract the book and issue a public apology. 2. Pay $5 million in damages. 3. Turn over all profits from book sales. 4. Never speak about the family publicly again. In other words, they wanted me silenced permanently and bankrupted for good measure. I called my lawyer, Artie Crawford, who I'd hired in preparation for exactly this scenario. They actually did it, I said. They're suing for $5 million. I expected they would, Artie said calmly. Defamation suits are the standard response when someone exposes uncomfortable truths. But Octavia, they have no case. Everything in your book is provably true. How do we prove that? I asked. We already have proof, Artie said. All that evidence you showed at the book launch, the notebooks, the will, the emails, the forensic analysis. That's our defense. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. If what you wrote is true, they can't win. But defending a lawsuit costs money, I worried. I have some savings and the book advance, but if this drags on for years... It won't, Artie assured me. Their lawyers know they have a weak case. This lawsuit isn't about winning in court. It's about intimidation. They're hoping you'll settle, retract the book, and go away quietly to avoid the stress and expense of litigation. I'm not settling, I said firmly. I'm not retracting anything. I'm not going silent again. Good, Artie said. Then let's fight. News of the lawsuit spread quickly. Within hours, it was being covered by every major news outlet. Family sues sister over best-selling memoir, alleging decades of theft. Woman who claims family stole her work now faces $5 million lawsuit. Siblings fight back against defamatory book with legal action. My publisher, Dovie Richardson, called me immediately. Octavia, this lawsuit is the best thing that could have happened, Dovie said. How is being sued for $5 million a good thing? I asked. Because it's confirming everything in your book, Dovie explained. If your family had ignored the book, some people might have dismissed it as exaggeration. But by suing you, they're validating that what you wrote is significant enough to threaten them. Plus, the publicity is incredible, Dovie continued. Your book sales have tripled since the lawsuit was announced. Everyone wants to read the book that a family is so desperate to suppress. I didn't write it for sales, I said. I know, Dovie said. You wrote it for truth, but the sales mean your voice is being heard. Millions of people are now reading your story. That's worth more than any lawsuit can take away. She was right. Within a week of the lawsuit being filed, my book had sold over 100,000 copies. I was getting interview requests from major television shows. Readers were posting reviews and testimonials online, sharing their own stories of family theft and being silenced. My story had touched a nerve. Thousands of people, mostly women, related to being dismissed, having their work stolen, being told to stay quiet to keep family peace. And they were angry, not just about what had happened to me, but about what had happened to them. One review particularly moved me. I cried reading this book. My sister stole my business idea 10 years ago and made millions while I struggled. My family told me to let it go and stop being jealous. Octavia Burrell's courage to speak out gave me the courage to finally tell my own truth. Thank you for refusing to stay silent. These messages kept me going as the lawsuit proceeded, because I knew I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone who'd ever been silenced by family, by power, by shame. 3 months after the lawsuit was filed, depositions began. This is where each side asks the other questions under oath, gathering information for the trial. My lawyer, Artie, and I sat across a conference table from Sterling and his lawyer, Burrell Stone. Ms. Burrell, Stone began, you claim in your book that your brother Sterling stole a business plan you created in 1985. Is that correct? Yes, I said. And you have evidence of this? Yes, I have my original handwritten business plan dated 1984, and I have Sterling's business plan submitted to investors in 1985. They're identical. Identical or similar, Stone pressed. Identical, I said firmly. Same projections, same strategies, same unique phrases. I can provide forensic analysis showing the documents are related. Stone shifted. Perhaps you collaborated on the business plan with your brother and simply misremembered the nature of the collaboration. I didn't collaborate, I said. I created it. Sterling asked for my help with his business idea. I wrote a complete plan. He took it and submitted it as his own work without crediting me. That's your claim, Stone said, but Mr. Burrell has a different recollection. Then Mr. Burrell is lying, I said calmly. Stone looked annoyed. Ms. Burrell, isn't it true that you have a history of mental health issues, that you've been treated for depression? I was treated for depression in my 50s, yes, I said. After decades of being gaslit by my family and having my work stolen. That doesn't mean I'm unreliable. It means I responded normally to abnormal circumstances. But depression can affect memory, can't it? Stone suggested. My memory is fine, I said. And I have documentation proving every claim in my book. This isn't about my memory or mental health. It's about evidence. The deposition continued for 6 hours. Stone tried every angle, suggesting I was unreliable, jealous, mentally unstable, seeking attention. But every time, I calmly referred back to the evidence. The depositions with my other siblings went similarly. Their lawyers tried to attack my credibility, but the evidence spoke for itself. Royal's deposition was particularly revealing. Mr. Burrell, Artie asked, you registered several gospel songs under your name between 1980 and 1985, correct? Yes, Royal said. And these songs became quite successful. Yes, I'm a talented songwriter. Did your sister Octavia ever help you with songwriting? Artie asked. Royal hesitated. She may have suggested some ideas. Suggested ideas or wrote the songs, Artie pressed. She doesn't know anything about music, Royal said dismissively. Then explain this, Artie said, showing him audio recordings. These are recordings from your church in 1978, found in the church archives. The voice singing is identified as Octavia Burrell. The songs she's singing, listen to the melodies and lyrics. The recordings played. My voice, younger but recognizable, singing 3 songs. Now listen to these, Artie continued, playing Royal's recorded versions of the same songs from 1982. Same melodies, same lyrics, registered under your name 4 years after your sister sang them publicly. She must have been singing songs I wrote, Royal said weakly. The church archives note that Octavia wrote these songs for a youth service, Artie said. There's documentation from the church program. Royal had no answer. His lie was exposed, on the record under oath. 4 months into the lawsuit, something unexpected happened. Zenobia's daughter Artie Lamar contacted me. Aunt Octavia, I need to talk to you, Artie said on the phone. About the lawsuit, I have information that might help you. We met at a coffee shop. Artie looked nervous but determined. My mom has been keeping documents, Artie revealed. Old letters, journals, records, things she thought she'd destroyed but actually just stored in boxes in her attic. What kind of documents? I asked. Evidence, Artie said. Letters between my mom and the other siblings discussing how to handle the Octavia problem. Journal entries where my mom admits to taking your stories. Financial records showing how they split your inheritance. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I'm tired of the lies, Artie said, tears in her eyes. I grew up watching my mom and uncles and aunts steal from you, watching them mock you behind your back, watching them teach my generation that it's okay to take credit for other people's work as long as you don't get caught. I have children now, Artie continued. I don't want to teach them those values. I don't want them growing up thinking that family loyalty means covering up theft and abuse. Will you testify, I asked, if this goes to trial? Yes, Artie said without hesitation. I'll testify. I'll provide the documents. I'll tell the truth about what this family has done. Your mother will never forgive you, I warned. I know, Artie said sadly, but I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror, and I can't do that while staying silent about this. I hugged my niece, this brave young woman who was choosing truth over family loyalty. Thank you, I said. You're doing the right thing. With Artie's testimony and documents, my lawyer's case became even stronger. My siblings' lawyers knew they were in trouble. 2 weeks after Artie agreed to testify, I received a settlement offer. My siblings would drop the lawsuit if I agreed to. 1. Remove 3 specific chapters from future editions of the book. 2. Add a disclaimer saying, some details may be disputed. 3. Not give any more media interviews about the family. 4. Pay their legal fees, $200,000. They're desperate, Artie Crawford told me. They know they're going to lose if this goes to trial. They're trying to save face and get something out of this. What do you recommend? I asked. Take it to trial, Artie said. Win completely. Set a precedent that you can't silence truth-tellers with frivolous lawsuits. But trials are expensive, I worried, and stressful. Your publisher has offered to cover all legal costs, Artie revealed. They believe in your case, and they see the value in a complete victory. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the right to tell your own story without being bullied into silence. I thought about it carefully. The settlement would end this nightmare quickly. I could move on with my life. But it would also mean compromising my truth, suggesting that maybe my family's version had merit, agreeing to partial silence. After 50 years of silence, partial silence felt like total silence. No settlement, I decided. We go to trial, we win completely. I was hoping you'd say that, Artie smiled. 6 months after the lawsuit was filed, we went to trial. The courtroom was packed. Media filled the press section. My family sat on one side with their lawyers. I sat on the other side with Artie Crawford. Judge Royal Chen presided over the case. The trial lasted 3 weeks. My siblings' lawyers argued that I'd exaggerated, misremembered, or fabricated events to make myself look like a victim. But my lawyer presented overwhelming evidence. Forensic analysis proving my notebooks were written in 1969, years before Zenobia's original stories. Church archives showing I'd performed my songs in 1978, years before Royal registered them. Business documents showing my business plan predated Sterling's by a year. Quilt designs in my handwriting from 1972, years before Winnie's original designs. The county filed will proving my mother hadn't cut me out of her inheritance. Emails between my siblings, planning to hide my share of the estate. Financial records showing they'd divided my $15,000 among themselves. Witness after witness testified. Mrs. Dovie Matthews, my 3rd grade teacher, testified about my early writing talent and my family's dismissal of my education. Church members testified about my songs being performed years before Royal claimed them. Former employees of Homer's restaurant testified about watching him copy my recipes without credit. And finally, Artie Lamar, Zenobia's daughter, took the stand. Your Honor, I grew up watching my mother and my aunts and uncles steal from Aunt Octavia, Artie testified, her voice clear despite her tears. I watched them laugh about it in private while publicly claiming she was jealous or lying. I have letters and journals my mother kept, Artie continued. Documents where she admits taking Aunt Octavia's work, where she discusses with her siblings how to keep Aunt Octavia quiet, where she specifically writes, as long as we stick together, no one will believe Octavia. She has no power, no credibility. We can take whatever we want." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge looked shocked. "I'm testifying today because I don't want my children growing up in a family built on theft and lies," Artie concluded. "Aunt Octavia deserves justice. She deserves to have her truth acknowledged, and my mother and my aunts and uncles deserve to be held accountable." My siblings looked defeated. They knew the case was lost. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours. They returned with their verdict, not guilty on all counts. The jury found that everything in my book was substantially true, that I had not defamed my family, and that my family's lawsuit was frivolous and intended to silence me. Judge Chen went further. "This court finds that the plaintiffs, Sterling Burrell, Royal Burrell, Zenobia Marshall, Winnie Crawford, and Homer Burrell, filed this lawsuit not to seek justice, but to intimidate and silence Ms. Octavia Burrell," Judge Chen said. "The evidence presented shows a decades-long pattern of theft, manipulation, and abuse," he continued. "Ms. Burrell had every right to tell her story. The plaintiffs had no right to silence her. Therefore, I'm not only dismissing this lawsuit, I'm ordering the plaintiffs to pay Ms. Burrell's legal fees and court costs," Judge Chen ruled. "Additionally, I'm awarding Ms. Burrell $100,000 in sanctions for having to defend against this frivolous lawsuit." The courtroom erupted in applause. Reporters rushed out to file their stories. My family sat stunned, defeated completely. As I left the courthouse, Sterling tried one last time to speak to me. "Octavia, this isn't over," Sterling said. "You may have won in court, but you've destroyed this family. You've made us a laughingstock. I've told the truth," I interrupted. "That's all I did. If the truth destroyed this family, maybe this family deserved to be destroyed." "We gave you jobs when you needed work," Sterling protested. "We let you into our homes." "You used me as free labor while profiting from my work," I corrected. "That's not generosity, that's exploitation." "I hope you're happy," Sterling said bitterly. "You're rich now from your book. You've gotten your revenge. I hope it was worth losing your family." "Sterling, I lost my family 50 years ago," I said quietly. "When you all decided my voice, my work, my truth didn't matter. I'm not losing anything now. I'm finally claiming what was always mine, my story." I walked away from my brother, from the courthouse, from 50 years of silence. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. How did you feel about the verdict? Would you have testified against your parent like Artie did? Where are you watching from? 1 year after the trial, I stood in front of 300 women at a writing conference in Chicago, preparing to give the keynote speech. My book had sold over 2 million copies. It had been translated into 15 languages. A documentary about my story was in production, and I'd received thousands of letters from people, mostly women, who'd found courage in my story to tell their own truths. But the most important change wasn't external, it was internal. For the first time in 73 years, I had a voice, and people were listening. "Thank you for that introduction," I began, looking out at the audience. "A year ago, I was terrified of speaking publicly. I'd spent 50 years being told my voice didn't matter, that no one wanted to hear what I had to say, that I should stay quiet and be grateful. Today, I'm here to tell you that your voice matters." I continued. "No matter how many people have silenced you, no matter how long you've stayed quiet, no matter how scary it feels to finally speak, your story deserves to be told, and you deserve to be heard." The audience applauded. I could see some women crying, nodding, relating to my words. I was about to continue when I noticed someone entering the back of the room. It was Zenobia, my sister. She looked older, smaller somehow. The confident, smug energy she'd always carried was gone. She looked tired, ashamed, and hesitant. Our eyes met across the room. I wasn't sure what to feel: anger, satisfaction, pity, or some combination of all three. Zenobia didn't try to disrupt. She just quietly took a seat in the back row and waited. I continued my speech, though my heart was racing. "Many of you have read my book," I said. You know about the decades of theft, the silencing, the family that took credit for my work. But what you might not know is what happened after the trial. After I won, I expected to feel victorious, vindicated, happy, I continued. Instead, I felt empty, because winning the trial didn't give me back the 50 years I'd lost. It didn't restore the relationships that were destroyed. It didn't erase the pain of being invisible for so long. What it did do was give me a choice, I said. I could spend the rest of my life bitter about what was taken from me, or I could use my remaining years to help others find their voices. I chose the second option, I said, and that's why I'm here today, to tell you that it's never too late to speak up. It's never too late to tell your truth. It's never too late to claim what's yours. I shared stories from readers who'd contacted me, women who'd had their work stolen by colleagues, by partners, by family members, women who'd been told to stay quiet to keep peace, to avoid conflict, to be team players. One woman wrote to me about how her husband built a successful business using her ideas, then divorced her and took everything, I shared. She'd stayed silent for years because she had no proof, no documentation. After reading my book, she started documenting everything. She's now suing him for her share of the business. Another woman told me her sister stole her PhD thesis and published it under her own name, I continued. She'd stayed silent because she didn't want to destroy her sister's career. After reading my story, she reported the theft to the university. Her sister was fired, and she finally got credit for her own work. These women found their courage in my story, I said, just as I found my courage in finally deciding that my truth mattered more than my family's comfort. So I'm here to tell you, speak up, document everything. Don't let anyone steal your work, your ideas, your voice. And if they already have, it's not too late to fight back. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After my speech, women lined up to talk to me, share their stories, ask for advice. I spent 2 hours listening, encouraging, supporting. And the whole time, Zenobia waited in the back of the room. Finally, after the last person had left, Zenobia approached me. "Octavia," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I studied my sister. We hadn't spoken since the trial a year ago. During that trial, Zenobia had been defiant, angry, insisting she'd done nothing wrong. Now she looked broken. "What do you want, Zenobia?" I asked, not unkindly, just cautiously. "I want to apologize," Zenobia said, her voice breaking. "For everything, for stealing your stories when we were young, for all the years of taking credit for your work, for lying about the inheritance, for suing you to try to silence you, for everything." I didn't respond immediately. I'd imagined this conversation many times, what I would say if my siblings ever apologized. But now that it was happening, I wasn't sure how to feel. "Why now?" I asked. "Why apologize now, a year after the trial?" "Because I've had a year to think about what we did," Zenobia said. "A year to face the consequences. A year to understand how wrong we were." "What consequences?" I asked. "My publishing career is over," Zenobia said. "After the trial, my publisher dropped me. Readers returned my books, angry that they were based on stolen work. I can't get published anywhere now. The charity foundation I ran, they removed me from the board," she continued. "Said they couldn't have someone with my ethical record representing them." "My daughter Artie won't speak to me," Zenobia added, tears streaming down her face. "She says she can't respect someone who stole from family and then sued the victim to keep her quiet." "I've lost everything, Octavia," Zenobia sobbed. "My career, my reputation, my daughter's respect, all because of what I did to you." "No," I corrected gently. "Not because of what you did to me, because of what you did. Period. You made choices to steal, to lie, to manipulate. You're facing the natural consequences of those choices." "I know," Zenobia said. "You're right, I'm not the victim here. You are, I needed you to know that I finally understand what we did to you. And I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." I looked at my sister, this woman who'd stolen my first stories when I was 16, who'd built a career on my words, who'd sued me to try to silence me. "Do you actually regret what you did?" I asked. Or do you just regret getting caught? Zenobia thought about it carefully. Both, honestly. I regret getting caught because it destroyed my life, but I also genuinely regret what I did. I've been reading your book, really reading it, trying to understand your perspective. And, I prompted. And I see now how much we hurt you, Zenobia said. How we dismissed you, erased you, made you invisible. How we took everything you created and never once said thank you or gave you credit. We told ourselves it was okay because we were family, because you weren't doing anything with those ideas anyway, because you wouldn't have succeeded without us, Zenobia continued. But those were just excuses. The truth is we stole from you because we could, because you had no power to stop us. That's the first honest thing you've said in 50 years, I said. I know, Zenobia said. Octavia, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to be sisters again. I just needed you to know that I finally see you. I finally acknowledge what we did. And I'm sorry. I sat with that for a moment. An apology I'd wanted for 50 years, finally spoken. But it didn't change the past. It didn't give me back the decades I'd lost. It didn't erase the pain. Thank you for the apology, I finally said. I don't know if I can forgive you, maybe someday, but right now the wound is still too fresh. I understand, Zenobia said. Can I ask one thing? What? Can I buy your book? Zenobia asked. Not the one I already read, a new copy, and can you sign it for me? I was surprised by the request. Why? Because I want to remember, Zenobia said. I want to have your words in your handwriting as a reminder of what I did and what it cost both of us. I don't want to ever forget this lesson. I thought about refusing, but something in Zenobia's broken demeanor convinced me she was sincere. Okay, I said. I signed a copy of my book for my sister. Zenobia, may you find your own voice and use it for truth, not theft. Octavia. Zenobia read the inscription and started crying again. Thank you, she whispered, then left. I watched her go, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Not quite forgiveness, not quite satisfaction, just acknowledgement. She'd finally seen me, finally admitted the truth. It was something, not everything, but something. 18 months after the trial, I did something I'd been planning for a while. I used the money from my book sales, the court judgment, and my savings to start a foundation. The Silent No More Foundation. The foundation's mission was to help people who'd had their work stolen, their voices silenced, their stories erased, particularly women and marginalized people who lacked the resources to fight back. We provided 3 services. 1. Legal support. Free lawyers for people fighting plagiarism, copyright theft, or defamation lawsuits meant to silence them. 2. Documentation training. Workshops teaching people how to document their work, protect their intellectual property, and build evidence if theft occurs. 3. Voice amplification. A platform where people could share their stories of being silenced and having their work stolen. Within 6 months, we'd helped 47 people fight back against theft and silencing. We'd won 32 cases. We'd helped dozens of people finally get credit for their work. One woman, Artie Stevens, particularly stood out. She'd invented a medical device while working at a hospital, but her supervisor had patented it under his own name and made millions. I had no idea how to fight back, Artie told me. I had no money for lawyers, no proof because I hadn't documented anything. I thought I just had to accept that he'd stolen my invention. Our foundation provided her with a lawyer and helped her build a case using hospital emails and development records, I explained at a foundation fundraiser. 3 months ago, the court ruled in her favor. She's now receiving royalties from her own invention. Justice, finally. The foundation became my life's work, the thing that made 50 years of silence worth it, because I wasn't just telling my story anymore, I was helping others tell theirs. 2 years after the trial, the documentary about my story premiered at film festivals. Titled Silent No More, The Octavia Burrell Story. It combined interviews with me, my family members who were willing to talk, only Zenobia agreed, my niece Artie Lamar, people who'd known me throughout my life, and legal experts discussing the broader issues of family theft and silencing. The most powerful moment came when the filmmakers interviewed 50 other people, men and women of all ages and backgrounds, who'd experienced similar theft and silencing in their families. "My brother stole my songs," one man said. "My sister took credit for my paintings," a woman shared. "My father built his business on my ideas and never paid me," another said. "My mother wrote a book using stories I'd told her and never acknowledged me," someone else revealed. Story after story after story. A pattern so common, yet so rarely discussed because victims stayed silent out of shame, fear, or love for family. "Family theft is invisible theft," I said in the documentary. "Because we're told that family comes first, that blood is thicker than water, that we should forgive and forget. But that mentality protects abusers and silences victims. I'm here to say, speak up, even if it destroys relationships, even if people call you bitter or jealous or ungrateful, even if you lose your family. Because the family you lose by speaking truth wasn't worth keeping," I concluded, "and the voice you gain is worth everything." The documentary won awards. It sparked national conversations about intellectual property within families, about the ways women's work is routinely stolen and credited to men, about the cost of staying silent to keep peace. And it brought more people to my foundation, seeking help, sharing stories, refusing to stay silent anymore. 3 years after the trial, something unexpected happened. Royal, my brother who'd stolen my songs, reached out to me. "Octavia, some of us would like to talk," Royal said on the phone. "Not all the siblings, Sterling and Homer, still refuse, but Zenobia, Winnie, and me, we'd like to meet with you, if you're willing." I was hesitant. "Why?" "Because we owe you more than apologies," Royal said. "We owe you restitution. We've been discussing among the three of us, and we want to try to make things right, as much as we can." I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a cafe in downtown Atlanta. Royal, Zenobia, and Winnie sat across from me. They all looked older, humbled, different from the confident siblings who dismissed me for decades. "We've been in therapy," Royal began. "Individual and group therapy, working through why we did what we did, why we thought it was okay to steal from you." "And," I asked. "And we realized we were taught that you didn't matter," Winnie said quietly. "Mama and Daddy favored the boys and the older girls. You were the baby, the unplanned one, the one they didn't have resources for, so they taught us you were less important." "We internalized that," Zenobia added. "We genuinely believed your ideas, your work, your voice mattered less than ours, that we were doing you a favor by using what you created since you wouldn't do anything with it anyway." "But it wasn't a favor," Royal said. "It was theft, it was abuse, and we robbed you of 50 years of recognition, credit, and success." "We can't give you those years back," Winnie said, "but we want to try to make financial restitution. We've calculated how much money we made from your work over the years." They slid a document across the table. It was a detailed accounting. Zenobia's writing career built on my stories, estimated $400,000 in earnings. Royal's music career built on my songs, estimated $1.2 million in earnings. Winnie's craft business built on my designs, estimated $600,000 in earnings, plus the $15,000 stolen inheritance. Total, over $2.2 million. "We know we can't pay it all back immediately," Royal said, "but we've set up payment plans. We're each committing to pay back our portion over the next 10 years, with interest." I stared at the document, stunned. "You're actually going to pay me back?" "It's not enough," Zenobia said. "Money can't restore your reputation or give you back the years we stole. But it's something. It's acknowledgement that we took something that wasn't ours and we owe you compensation." "Why now?" I asked. "You could have just walked away, rebuilt your lives elsewhere. Why do this?" "Because we can't live with ourselves if we don't," Winnie said simply. "Because our children are watching. Because if we don't make this right, we're teaching the next generation that family theft is acceptable, and it's not." I looked at my 3 siblings, people who'd hurt me deeply, who'd stolen from me repeatedly, who'd tried to silence me permanently, but who were now, finally, trying to make amends. I accept your restitution plan, I said, but I want something else too. What? Royal asked. I want you to speak publicly about what you did, I said. I want you to admit in your own voices that you stole from me, that the lawsuit was frivolous, that I was telling the truth all along. I want you to help me educate others, I continued. To speak at my foundation events, to talk about how family theft happens and why it's wrong. To use your mistakes to help prevent others from making the same ones. They looked at each other, then back at me. We'll do it, Zenobia said. Whatever it takes to make this right. 5 years after the trial, I celebrated my 77th birthday, surrounded by people who truly valued my voice. My foundation had helped over 300 people fight back against theft and silencing. We'd won millions of dollars in restitution for victims. We'd changed laws in 2 states regarding intellectual property within families. My book was now taught in college courses about family dynamics, women's history, and intellectual property rights. The documentary had been nominated for an Emmy. And I'd written a second book, this one not about my family, but about the hundreds of people who'd shared their stories with me through the foundation. Their voices, their truths, their victories. At my birthday celebration, my niece Artie Lamar stood up to make a toast. 5 years ago, Aunt Octavia did something terrifying, Artie said. She broke 50 years of silence. She told the truth even though it destroyed family relationships. She refused to be quieted even when faced with a $5 million lawsuit. And because of her courage, hundreds of other people found their voices, Artie continued. Including me, I learned from her that speaking truth is more important than keeping false peace. That integrity matters more than family loyalty when that family is built on lies. So here's to Aunt Octavia, Artie raised her glass. The woman who refused to stay silent, who turned 50 years of pain into a movement, who proved that it's never too late to claim your voice and tell your story. Everyone applauded. I looked around the room at faces young and old, people whose lives had been changed by choosing truth over silence. And I thought about the 72-year-old woman who'd stood at that book launch 5 years ago, terrified but determined, ready to break her silence no matter the cost. They'd all wanted me silent, my family, my circumstances, my own fear. But I'd found my voice. I'd written my success story. I'd turned 50 years of silence into a legacy of truth. And they'd screamed, not in victory, but in defeat. Because once you give someone back their voice, you can never silence them again. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and started writing again. Not another memoir, not another account of pain and theft. Instead, I was writing a guide, a practical handbook for anyone who'd had their work stolen, their voice silenced, their story erased. Chapter 1, Documentation is Power. They will tell you that you have no proof, that it's your word against theirs, that no one will believe you. They're counting on you having nothing to show for your work. No records, no witnesses, no evidence. Don't give them that advantage. Document everything, every idea you share, every creation you make, every conversation about your work. Save it, date it, back it up. Because someday, you might need to prove that what you created was yours. And when that day comes, documentation will be your strongest weapon. I kept writing, pouring 5 years of experience helping others into practical advice. How to protect your work, how to recognize theft early, how to build a case, how to find the courage to speak up, how to refuse to stay silent. Because that was my real legacy, not the book sales or the court victory or the foundation's success. My legacy was helping others find the strength to use their voices, to tell their truths, to refuse to be silent, and to know deep in their bones that their stories mattered, that their work had value, that they deserved credit for what they created. For 50 years, I'd been told otherwise. I'd been silenced, dismissed, erased. But I'd found my voice. I'd written my success story. And no one would ever silence me again. What an incredible journey. Octavia broke 50 years of silence, won a defamation lawsuit, started a foundation helping hundreds of others, and finally got financial restitution from her siblings. She turned decades of pain into a movement that changed lives. She proved that it's never too late to find your voice and tell your truth. This story proves that your voice matters, even if people try to silence you. Documentation is powerful. Always protect your work. Speaking truth is more important than keeping false peace. It's never too late to claim what's yours. Courage inspires courage. Your story can help others find their voice. Success isn't revenge. It's using your pain to help others. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to this channel for more empowering stories. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications for new video content. Drop a comment. Have you ever had your work stolen? How did you handle it? What part of Octavia's journey inspired you most? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, Philippines? Let me know. Remember, your voice matters. Your work has value. Your story deserves to be told. Don't let anyone, not family, not fear, not shame, silence you. Document everything, speak your truth. And know that it's never too late to claim what's rightfully yours. Thank you for following Octavia's powerful journey from silenced victim to victorious advocate. May her story inspire you to refuse to stay silent and to help others find their voices too. Until the next story, stay strong, speak your truth, and never let anyone steal your voice.